Hey, this is Jordan Gibson, artist of Batman: The Adventures Continue.
This is best friend of the show, Monica Cabina, artist and colorist on Batman: The Adventures Continue.
You're listening to the DCAU review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everybody, to another bonus episode of the DCAU review. I am one of your hosts, Cal, and with me, my good friend and good brother, Liam. Liam, as we talked about last week, we have some real-life stuff that has affected our recording time for the last 2 weeks here, but we are not leaving our listeners empty-handed. We hate the thought of a week going by without our wonderful baritone voices coming through the ears of our listeners. I don't think I'm not a baritone. You might be a baritone. I'm not a baritone. But either way, we are back again, and we are picking up right where we left off. So last week, if you did not listen to last week's bonus episode, do not listen to this episode. I mean, you can. You can do whatever you want. It's a free country. But I wouldn't advise listening to this episode before you listen to last week's episode, because it is a second part of a two-part issue of Batman and Robin Adventures. So we talked about last week, Liam. We covered the first two issues. We're covering the first two issues of Batman and Robin Adventures, sort of as a special treat to ourselves, because technically this issue that we're going to cover today and last week's issue was originally pitched as a potential Batman the Animated Series tie-in movie. So it is in the upper echelon of some of the more thoroughly written out stories, I dare say. And a little guy by the name of Paul Dini responsible for this one. So it lends itself to a more cinematic enjoyment, I dare say. So we'll be getting into the review of Two-Timer Part 2 today. Excited to look at this one with you as we really ramp things up with where we left things off with our cliffhanger last week.
That's right. Yeah. So when we last left you, again, just as a refresher, if it's been a week since you listened to the last one, Harvey Dent was seemingly once again on his way to recovery, being visited by Bruce Wayne, his best friend, and Grace, his former fiance, who still harbors quite a few feelings for him. But
wait, shouldn't we do previously on the Batman and Robin Adventures?
Okay, absolutely, we should. Yes.
Okay, good.
But yes, so we have Bruce and Grace are meeting with Harvey at Arkham, talking about how he's getting better. He mentions that he might be ready soon to get a surgery. Timeline clues if you want them. But yes, things seem to be going well. But of course, that old clown Prince of Crime, he's not out holding the city to ransom. There's no laughing gas garbage scows, but he still manages to wreak quite a bit of havoc on Harvey's mental state as he plants the seed that, along with some help on the outside from Harley, that Bruce and Grace are carrying on a little something without Harvey's knowledge, and are kind of playing him for a fool. Which eventually that works again after Harley is able to leak a photo of Grace and Bruce together in what we know to be a mostly innocent embrace, but that was not how it was pitched to the society editor of the Gotham Globe. And so as Harvey believes that he's been betrayed, he breaks out of Arkham and immediately goes right to Grace's front door. And so as we pick up issue 2 here, Batman and Robin hot on the trail, looking for Two-Face, and it's not going well so far.
That's right. Yeah, we have a sequence that's not all that different than maybe one that you would see later in the Return of the Joker Batman Beyond feature film, where Batman is going throughout Gotham's underworld, interrogating a bunch of criminals. Only this time, he's not looking for Robin or the Joker. He's looking for Two-Face. And we get that established by a gigantic word bubble in the very first page of him holding up a guy saying, "Where is Two-Face?" in very big, loud letters. So holding a guy by the lapels, really threatening to take care of him. So we see some interrogation going on. Unfortunately, Batman is not able to get any information out of any of the people that he's interrogating. No one knows what's going on, but he says he wants Two-Face, and he'll take this town apart piece by piece until I get him. And he tells this goon to kind of spread the word. So we do have a next sequence, a very interesting sequence. Again, maybe perhaps a bit of a timeline clue here, where Batman and Robin are riding in the Batmobile, and they're kind of discussing, why Batman is so interested and so hell-bent on finding Two-Face at this point. And Dick even calls Bruce out on the fact that he still believes that Harvey is somewhat redeemable, that there's any chance at him for making himself a better life. And Bruce says that the counseling and the rehabilitation, he really thought, based on everything that he was seeing, that Harvey was prepared to turn over a new leaf. Dick immediately says that there's not a chance, that if he was really cured, that it would have taken more than just the Joker's needling to push him over the edge. And Bruce sort of contradicts him and says, well, you don't know Harvey like I do. But Dick is not backing down. It's very much a back and forth, a sparring session here, as he says, well, he knows Two-Face, and no matter how hard Batman and Grace decide to be in denial about it, that he believes that he's always going to be a part of who Harvey is, and that the hateful, angry part of him is always going to lash out at anybody that crosses him. So he kind of punctuates that by saying he's not Harvey. So he's really trying to establish with Batman that the dent that Batman is kind of holding on to is no longer a part of him. So we kind of end things there as Dick gets dropped off back at Gotham State University. He gets into his dorm room, and wouldn't you know who is waiting there but none other than the aforementioned Two-Face with a pair of twin goons. He holds Robin or Dick up at this point. He's back in his Dick Grayson clothes, and he clearly thinks that Dick is a chip off the old block of who Bruce was. He mentions his old partying ways, and he mentions that he has some plans for taking Dick with him. So he has his goons knock Dick out. And then our next scene, we cut to a very interesting conversation that happens between Bruce and Harvey. Well, talking to the wrong Harvey, I guess, because it's no longer Harvey Dent, as Alfred picks up the phone and hands the phone directly over to Bruce. And Bruce and Harvey have a little heart to heart, I guess.
That's right. So here's what he has to do. He has to meet a car 1:30 a.m. outside of Wayne Manor. Come alone, no police. They blindfold him and take him up, and they realize now that he has arrived here at the Gotham Gardens, which we mentioned that was one of Bruce's sort of passion projects he'd been working on, as trying to revitalize part of downtown Gotham. And so here we see the plan, which is that Two-Face is going to leave him and their first he's going to flip the coin a few times, because he has Grace, he has Dick, and now he has Bruce. So he flips the coin, and he decides after the 3 flips that Bruce and Dick will be laid behind, and he will force Bruce to watch as everything Bruce cares about, which he includes Gotham Gardens, your ward, and of course yourself, will all go up in smoke as he's planted bombs in each of the buildings of this Gotham Gardens development. So things are looking a little dire. Thankfully, I guess for Grace's sake, she passed the coin toss, and so she gets taken away in quite a bit of a commotion as Two-Face and the rest of his goons leave Bruce and Dick to be seemingly blown to bits. And even though they're chained up and possibly minutes from death, Dick can't let it go. He has to tell him that he told him so.
Yeah.
So, but thankfully, of course, the master escape artist has a plan here, And he tells Dick to reach for his watch, which has some sort of lock-picking mechanism inside of it. So very James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
And they're able to free themselves from the chains. As soon as the clock strikes 2, the bombs begin to go off. They're still at the top of this tower. They're not sure how they're going to get down, but thankfully, Bruce mentioned that when Harvey let him talk to Dick on the phone for a moment, and Dick mentioned that he had been out with his girl Cindy, that must have been a reference to the night of the party. Which took place at this Gotham Gardens. So Bruce had already made arrangements to have the Bat plane nearby on remote control, and so they just are able to get to safety and fly away as the giant tower explodes. And we see them then getting Two-Face and his gang, along with Grace, getting away on a ship, some kind of cruise liner, and they appear to be leaving Gotham. And Grace is completely fed up at this point. She calls him a monster, tells him that even though as Two-Face tries to claim that by killing Bruce and Dick and blowing up those buildings, that's actually what's cured him and that they can be together now. Grace doesn't want to hear it. She calls him a monster, which sort of causes Two-Face to fly into a little bit of a rage. But thankfully, the dynamic duo arrive there at that point to take down Two-Face's thugs and to have one sort of final confrontation with Two-Face. But he grabs Grace as a hostage and seemingly is willing to throw her overboard. But hey, she's not exactly the damsel in distress here.
That's right. Now she wisely, despite being Batman being faced at that point with a bit of a dichotomy, if he is able to, or if he Two-Face says if he leaps at her, he's going to shoot Batman, or if he leaps at Grace, he'll shoot Grace. So either way, he's going to lose in this instinct. But as you mentioned, Grace is outwitting and outfoxes our Two-Face here by digging into his pocket, grabbing his coin. And I don't remember his coin having a jagged edge before, but apparently he had a coin in his pocket with a jagged edge, and she stabs him in the face with it, or at least like jams it into the corner of his cheekbone, which causes Two-Face to immediately reach for his face, drop the gun. It gives Batman enough time to lunge forward, kick Two-Face, knock him out, and save the day. And then we have a final heart-to-heart between Batman and Robin on the rooftop. They mentioned that a few of the buildings in Gotham Gardens were able to be saved. It's Robin recounts that even though that many of the things have been destroyed in that area, that Gotham will be able to be rebuilt. Many of the things, in fact, he says can be rebuilt. Batman says no, not everything, and as he looks on and sees Grace, who is walking away from the scene in tears, clearly being fed up and done with Harvey for good at this point. So that wraps up our issue, Liam. And as we mentioned last week, it sort of fills in the blanks from this character Grace. It kind of wraps her story up, at least, because she was very much in love and dedicated to Harvey all the way up through that Two-Face Part 1 and 2 episode. Even at the end of the episode, she seems to be compassionate and caring. But then for Second Chance, when we get to that episode, she's nowhere to be found. I don't even know if there's even a mention of her in that episode. I don't believe that there is. And then, of course, when we get to the new Batman Adventures, there's no mention of her at all. So it does sort of fill in the blanks, at least, where we understand at that point why she would have been MIA at that point, where she was quite literally a victim of Two-Face at this point, that he went over the edge so far that he pushes her away by being violent and homicidal towards her at times. So I will say this issue has a lot more action to it. It feels like the latter half, we have Dick getting kidnapped, and then we have nothing but this sort of back and forth, Batman doing the escape, or Bruce doing the escape with Dick, the explosion, and then we have this kind of final fight between everybody here at the end. But I think the most interesting thing, and I would be curious to kind of pick the brains of the people that worked on this, I guess Paul Dini, but it's kind of sowing those seeds of dissent that Dick has with Bruce and this argument of Bruce being blinded by his friendship, because Dick goes out of his way to say, like, you're too close to this situation
Yeah.
to see that he's too far gone, where Bruce is convinced that there's still good in Harvey, that there's still an opportunity to rehabilitate him, and doesn't quite, despite maybe mounting evidence, want to believe that his friend is really gone at this point. So that's interesting because I think we talked about in the Two-Face episode and then in Second Chance what endearing trait that was for Batman to have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this warm heart that sees the best, that believes, you know, that his friend is still in there, who's willing to sacrifice and continue to do whatever he can, put money up to help his friend potentially get freedom from this monster that is trying to kill him, essentially. But here you do have this other voice, which seems to be very, I mean, it's not unreasonable. Robin's not being unreasonable. He's very
No.
much pointing towards hard evidence here. So it's interesting. It's to use a metaphor that fits here, it's two sides of the same coin where you're both looking at a situation and you both have a different thought process on the assessment based on the evidence that's presenting itself, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's one of the things that I think is really kind of beautifully melancholy about this version of Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Is that yeah, he has these tethers to his Bruce Wayne side, right, to his human side. And it feels like across, if you watch these through to where we see him by the time we get to Batman Beyond, it's just slowly these were all ebbed away. All like he's lost by the time we see him there when he's an old broken down man with nothing to show for his life and a dog is his only companion. It's like, yeah, all because things like this happened. Because
Right.
he by the end of the issue, it certainly seems that he's lost faith in Harvey. And again,
Right.
all of their interactions for the new Batman adventures, there's never really an implication that they don't really speak about how he and Harvey were friends or talk about him trying to rehabilitate Harvey anymore. We see that Harvey and Grace kind of break apart at this point.
Right.
So it's like this it's another layer. Obviously, you know, his severing the partnership, or Dick severing the partnership with him and Robin, and then eventually what happens with Tim and what happens with Barbara. It's like, yeah, these are all like little pieces. Harvey is maybe, you could argue, one of the first dominoes to fall of like what people I think would often maybe consider a criticism to be levied at like Batman as he went on getting less three-dimensional. And I've always looked at, if you look at him in the new Batman adventures to even to Justice League to again where we see him in Batman Beyond, it's just no, he's getting more and more closed off.
Mm-hmm.
Like because he's closing himself more and more off, and as he loses more people either to psychosis and crime, or you know, Alfred dies and then people move away or whatever, he ends up in this life of solitude that he's built for himself. And it's like, yeah, I think this is like, you could argue that not being able to save Two-Face is kind of one of those first like cracks in the mirror, I think. And I think so it's really interesting to see that being displayed and how sort of forceful he is and still believing that Harvey could be saved. And then by the end of this issue, he's kind of like, no, yeah, this is done. Like this, he's just Two-Face, or at least that's kind of how I gleaned from it. Obviously, he's specifically looking down on Grace breaking things off with Harvey, and maybe he sees if Grace won't be part of this, that Harvey will never heal. Maybe that's part of the idea there as well. So it's like there's some interesting multifacets to how Two-Face's inability to rehabilitate maybe sets, if you, again, this is definitely headcanon like armchair cartoon psychologist here from me, but like this is one of the things that feels like it sets him on the path to ending up old and alone and angry that we see him when he meets Terry in Rebirth.
Yeah, and to your point, one of your favorite lines and maybe the most memorable line from that original Two-Face episode is the closing bit where he has the coin and he flips it into the well and he says, Commissioner, where there's love, there's hope. Um, and this
Yeah.
issue ends with Harvey's love walking away from him. She may still love him. A part of her may still love him, but she's tapped out at this point, rightfully so.
Yeah.
She's no longer interested in sticking around to see him. So Bruce may be seeing that love that she has and her willingness to have that sort of detachment from him, a detachment with love, if you will, allows Bruce to maybe or forces Bruce to come to grips with that idea that, oh well, maybe love isn't enough. Maybe love isn't enough in this
Yeah.
case for this particular person, for him to ever get better. So yeah, there's a little bit of that hope being drained out of him. And I think that is that is where we meet Bruce in Batman Beyond, where he's beyond hope at that point. Terry
Hmm.
helps bring it back a little bit. We see that throughout that series. But his compassion never went away. His interest in defending Gotham certainly never went away, but his hope for there being a way for him to help or to continue to kind of get that done goes away. So this, yeah, I love that. I love that this is, one of those things that could contribute to what eventually we see the evolution of this Batman character and what he eventually becomes. So yeah, spot on with that. All right, Liam. As far as the issue itself is concerned, some more great artwork, of course,
Hmm.
from our artists. Of course, Ty Templeton once again back with pencils. Rick Burchett once again inking. Linda Medley also responsible for colors. We had Richard Starkings for the lettering, and then we had Darren Vincenzo and Scott Peterson were the editors for the comic book. Lots of color. I feel like
Oh yeah.
every. First of all, I we open up with like 4 or 5 panels and then it goes to a splash page, which granted, I don't read as many comics as you do these days, but I love that. For whatever reason, it just feels like you're announcing something. Like you're getting a little, not a cold open, but a little bit of like a sneak peek, and then you get the credits. Like when you do a giant splash page, right?
Hmm.
Maybe the second or third page in, it just feels like you get extra comic book for some reason, even though you're not. Like
Right.
to me, that always feels like, oh, we got a little bit before the actual start of the issue.
It feels to me, to make a silly analogy, it's like when a song starts with the drummer clicking his sticks together.
Oh yeah, that's
So it's like
good.
you get like 4 panels. You get a guy really scared of Batman. You get Batman grabbing somebody by the lapels. You see Robin pulling a guy off his motorcycle, and then you see a guy crashing through a window. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Where is Two Face? And then
Right. Yeah.
then you get the big, the first note is just this incredible bit. But yeah, that first page is oh, that's burned into my brain. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's really really good. Back to the colors themselves though. I feel like Miss Medley did. I feel like every page there's sort of like a different hue that's used to sort of communicate some sort of emotion. The conversation that's happening between Dick and Bruce in the Batmobile, we kind of get this really, like we said, this volley back and forth, and the final kind of panel in that little initial conversation that they have there. Dick is completely in the forefront in color, and then you cut to Bruce, who is almost colorless in that shot
Hmm.
as Dick tells him like he's not Harvey, like he's Two-Face. And
Yeah.
it's almost as if the life is starting to drain out of Bruce by that coloration, what's communicated through the coloring there. I really liked that. There are one or two scenes also that we talked about last week where to really communicate either anger or frustration, there's almost like a red hue that comes over the color There's one where Two-Face is colored purple because of that, because you get this red
Yes.
hue over his natural blue, which I'm not gonna lie, the purple does really pop. I almost kind of wish that that character was purple
Yeah.
instead of blue sometimes, but yeah. And then we get the night scenes are all kind of done in with that same blue hue at the end, and then when they're getting out of the explosion, out of the clock tower, you get those bright oranges and reds. And then when Batman shows up at the end with Robin to take on Two-Face, we get some yellows and then kind of return to a normal color there without other than this one panel where Batman's giving a right cross to Two-Face that's completely has this red hue over top of it again. So
Hmm.
and then you get the final scene of Batman and Robin standing on the rooftop that's kind of bathed in this orange glow from the fire that's coming below. So, I would be very surprised if Monica Cabina didn't look at some of these panels for inspiration. Maybe looking at this, like these like if you like it fits so well, and I love that we can look at the Batman the Adventures Continue comics and look at this, and they just feel like they're a part of the same. Like it just feels the same. It does. It feels like there's no difference in the way that not only the artwork but just how things were colored here. It just fits all together. I love the continuity of coloration and stuff like that between everything. So really, really great job there for our artists for this issue.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great job. I will just shout out one panel that I think is a little bit of an Easter egg, which, as you kind of already touched on it, the final bit there where Grace digs the jagged coin into his cheek and his eye, which is in itself a great panel.
Mhm.
But we kind of cut, there's one panel of Two-Face sort of reaching up to grab his eye, and then we cut to Batman scowling that is almost directly lifted, I think, from the BTAS opening.
For sure,
Um,
100%.
and he does do a kick first, but then he does the big punch, and we see Two-Face on the ground unconscious and Batman standing completely in shadow at that point. So it's felt like a little homage to that BTOS opening, which is obviously super iconic, and one that Ty and Monica homaged again in Adventures Continue later on. So
Like poetry, it rhymes.
absolutely. Yeah, that's what that last page, as well as you already mentioned it, just Batman and Robin standing back to back as they're having this conversation, and almost like Batman can't even really bear to look at it. Like
Mhm.
look at the aftermath of what's happening. And I think that's a really compelling visual as well. Yes, the scene of them descending from the bat plane with the spotlight kind of coming down, everybody's sort of bathed in yellow there is great as well. The shots of the buildings exploding as they escape in the bat plane, very cool as well. So now I'm just naming random panels, but yeah, it's suffice to say this is great. I haven't gone back and read every single issue of any of these tie-in comics in a while.
Mhm.
Boy, this is got to be up there as like this and issue one, which again was great, but didn't necessarily have the bombastic action sequences, at least not as many of them as the latter half of this issue does. But man, just this has got to be in the running for one of the most beautifully illustrated DCAU comics ever. Just great job again from everyone involved in the art team. But yeah, it's great. And again, we always talk about it feels like feels, even though you're reading it, it does feel like you're watching an episode of the show. So it's a lot of fun. And yeah, we get those dramatic final panels of them looking down, and then Grace walking away with tears in her eyes, and we see Two Faces kind of doing the prayer hands, like he's pleading with her to come back,
Mhm.
but she's
Mhm.
not looking back. It's such a dramatic way to end there, and it's very little dialogue as well. So it's all done with the communication of the image of what's done there. So yeah, great job by everybody involved.
Absolutely. And Liam, I guess that this will bring us to our question that we posed last week. We will answer our own question that we posed to our listeners. Still, of course, interested in hearing what our listeners think as well. But now that we've gone through this, now we haven't reviewed the Sub-Zero movie on the podcast yet.
Coming
And
soon.
yes, coming soon at some point. And to be honest, I have not seen that movie in a very long time. So I'm going off of just the memories of a movie that I haven't seen in probably a decade. But if given the choice, would you have rather seen this potentially as a direct-to-video movie in place of Sub-Zero, or are you okay with what Sub-Zero ended up being and how that eventually led to the Mr. Freeze saga?
Well, it's funny because I mean, when you think about that, like it's such a butterfly effect question because
Yeah.
even if you don't love Sub-Zero, and again, we'll find out relatively soon when we review it, like it sets up more Mr. Freeze episodes in the new Batman Adventures, and then Meltdown in Batman Beyond, which we've recently talked about, maybe one of the best DCAU stories ever made.
Hmm.
Um, and certainly one of the best episodes of Batman Beyond ever. So it's like, well, do you lose that? Do you throw the baby out with the bathwater if you get rid of Sub-Zero?
Hmm.
Um, so I think I would say maybe we leave things as is, also because these comics are perfect. There's not like reading these, I just had a blast. There wasn't a moment where I was like, well, this is good, but it would be better if it was animated. Because sometimes, would you believe it? Batman and Robin and associated characters kind of lend themselves to comic book storytelling. I know it's a shock to a lot of people, especially some of the people that make these movies, but
Right.
yeah, so I think like this is a perfect comic book story, and maybe it would be a perfect movie too. I don't know, but I love the comic as is, and I think like what Sub-Zero is like it's a load bearing wall. If we knock that down, think about the other stuff we could lose, you know?
Yeah, I can't put it better than that. You can't lose what comes after it. You have to just kind of make your bed and lie in it at this point. Certainly if 10 years from now they're like, we're turning these two comics into an animated movie, like woohoo, I'll be there first in
Absolutely.
line. Like, but to revisit history and change the past, nah, you gotta just kind of go with what the hand that you were dealt. So this is perfectly fine as a two-issue comic book, and I'll take the Sub-Zero.
Yeah, and then I think the other thing we mentioned is, do we think this happens before or after Second Chance?
I think because Grace is not in Second Chance, not mentioned, the
Okay.
Half Moon Club is mentioned. Dang it.
I know there's little bits like because again in the first issue he does mention I'll be ready to get the surgery soon or whatever,
Right.
but that could be a prelude to the surgery he almost gets.
I'm gonna say that this is after second, I mean before Second Chance,
Okay.
because Grace is not in Second Chance, not mentioned. We don't ever see or hear her again. He doesn't even mention it as a throwaway line. He only talks about how Bruce is there. The
Hmm.
only thing that I feel like somewhat contradicts it is that Robin isn't like, "Hey, I've been telling you this guy isn't Harvey anymore." Like
Right.
that part isn't mentioned in the
Yeah, they have friction in Second Chance, but it's not really related to Harvey. It's because Robin wasn't able to catch the thugs taking Two Face away or whatever.
right, right, right.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like I said, I like the ending of this because, like, for all the reasons I talked about, of like, if we take it to mean that Bruce no longer believes that Harvey can be saved, I think that tracks better with how he treats Two Face for the rest of the on-screen adventures we see in the new Batman adventures.
True.
But I think the way you pointed out, the fact that Grace is not in Second Chance, which if this was before this, she would be involved with that. Maybe she wouldn't be there, but he would have at least mentioned her. So yeah,
Right.
I think this has to fall before Second Chance. But again, this is nerd canon. If there's another line or another panel in the comic that anybody listening thinks they can make it work for a just pre TNBA story, let us know because I would love to hear the theory as well.
Absolutely. You can do so, of course, as we begin to wrap up here, Liam. You can do so by joining in the conversation, whether you're on Twitter/X at DCAU Review, on Instagram at DCAU Review, or check out this week's Spotify exclusive question of the week. Via the poll. Check that out. You can also, of course, comment on each Spotify episode. Heck, if you want to leave your personal opinions of this as a review on Apple Podcasts, you may do that as well. And if it's 5 stars and you live within the continental United States, we'll reward you for doing so. So we'll give you a prize for your having an opinion. Doesn't get better than that. It's kind of like an election, except the prize is much better. But yes, so we invite you to join the conversation one of those ways. Subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app, or of course we are streaming on the Pod Tower on YouTube, along with the rest of the folks from Watchtower Database and their ongoing series, as well as a couple of other podcasts up there. So check that out, subscribe. You can also check out the show notes. You can support us and become a monthly supporter. Thank you to our monthly supporters, give of their hard-earned dollars each and every month to support the podcast and encourage us to continue as we are on this journey of covering the DCAU. It's been a long journey, but we are enjoying each and every step of the way. And then, of course, you can also check out the show notes for a link to our store where you can pick up a piece of merchandise and support us directly that way. Liam will be back to our regular format next week as we hit the not so large milestone, episode 330. So we thank you for all of our listeners for tuning in for these last 2 bonus episodes as we've taken a brief 2-week hiatus from our standard reviews. But be assured, listeners, we will be once again back next week with a new review. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait.
That is right, Cal. We will be back next week with an episode of Justice League Unlimited, a very exciting and fun one. The first, speaking of 2-part adventures, we're kicking it off with one of JLU's only, fully official 2-part adventures, at least ones that have the same name. And that is with The Once and Future Thing, Part 1. We're heading back to the Old West and also maybe the future. A lot is going on, and that's one of the most remembered episodes of JLU. So excited to get into that next week.
Can't wait, Liam. It's going to be a blast. But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we'll talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.